so that means that we have to think about how to upload these recordings, because we're getting a lot of requests for recording of this meeting, but also of the previous one. People are still waiting for it. So that's something to talk about at the end of this meeting. But I think we shouldn't wait too much longer. Shall we wait a few more minutes, or shall we start with your presentation, Paulina? What do you think?
Maybe we could start, so we can kind of gradually get into it.
Yes,
and by the time it gets interesting, everybody will be here, like Alex.
Yeah. Right. Okay, so let's start the recording now then, okay? Oh, yes, I already started. I heard the computer voice. Okay. So Paulina, your screen looks good. Can you get rid of the toolbar and the sidebar?
Does it look okay?
Yep, it's okay.
So whenever you want me to start.
Right.
So I'll just begin. So, Anton, thank you so much for your invitation and for, allowing me to be a part of this team. And I must also specifically thank dear Dr. Mai Konishi. It's because of her that I got to know, all of you and become a part of ILCN. Our preparations for the conference last year, though I couldn't attend, and now presenting for you. So maybe I'll just kind of briefly introduce myself first and then talk about the topic of my presentation. I'm very bad at self-introductions, so I put up this slide. First of all, to tell you that it's not me alone who prepared for this presentation. It's always me and my research partner. She's currently sleeping under my desk. Her name is Bebe. And so usually my work is, I often love saying that I work both at local, national, and international levels during one day. So at the national level, I work a lot with indigenous and local communities here in Taiwan, promoting, facilitating integrated landscape and seascape approaches in the Satoyama initiative. That's what I'll be talking about today. At a national level, I work with the Forestry and Nature Conservation Agency and also Ocean Affairs Council on promotion of OECMs, nature-based solutions. So it's a big topic for us now. And international level, you can see it here on the screen. So maybe we bumped into each other, I don't know, at IPBES meetings or during IUCN WCPA. And of course, most importantly, maybe it's international partnership for the Satoyama initiative with Maiko, for example. So just to let you know. And also this year, we launched very relevant to our group, a working group on the Global Land Program, which is called Policy Tailoring for Sustainable Land System Transformations. It's still a very, very young group. And so maybe in the future, we would also be happy to welcome you to our working group as well. So just a very brief introduction. And so today, I'm very excited to speak to you about Taiwan Ecological Network, which is a very big nationwide project that we are promoting right now. And when saying we, I mean that I am just a part, just a molecule of a much, much larger team. And my team is mainly responsible for promotion of our integrated landscape and seascape approaches within this framework. So, and of course, happy Labor Day. So I'll kind of go step by step because I'm not sure, how much you know about Taiwan. So kind of to get you into, this theme. So, the location of Taiwan, we're next to mainland China, Japan, Philippines. Our location is also quite unique because as you can see here from the map, Taiwan is located in the collision of two tectonic plates. And it's also intersected by the Tropic of Cancer. So it means that we have two climatic zones, subtropical and tropical. We also have very unique geological, geomorphological, and climatic conditions, which leads to, of course, very unique production environment, like suitability for different farming practices, like rice paddy farming, fruit orchards, bamboo farming, and so on and so forth. And also we have a very high mountain range in the center of the island, which is almost as high as Mountain Fuji in Japan, which again relates us to Japan so much. And of course, because of these geomorphological and climatic conditions, Taiwan has an amazing biodiversity. It's also one of the reasons why I came here and never left. So we have over 60,000 species, out of which I'm always bad at numbers, but it's 3.4% of the world's total species numbers, and a very high concentration of endemic and rare species. And I'll talk about some of them today as well. But also, so it's beautiful diversity, right? Natural richness. We also know that Taiwan is a very densely populated island. We have Claire here from Australia. So Claire will look at our population size. It's very similar to the one in Australia, but you can imagine the land size is completely different, right? So Taiwan is among top 20 most densely populated countries in the world. So you can imagine the kind of land use pressure and challenges that we're facing. So on this slide, I must mention to you, just to explain to you a bit, that when we look at the map of Taiwan, and with all this, its biodiversity and richness, we need to understand the status of nature conservation. So currently 20% of the island is officially protected under a network of protected areas. And we also have a thing called state-owned or national forests. So it's over 42%. These are not official protected areas, but these are places that are protected by the Forestry and Nature Conservation Agency, and they do have some sorts of land use restrictions. And a lot of our keystone species, like for example, Formosan black bear, the very famous one, this would be his habitat. So of course, very effective conservation in this kind of areas. But as you can see here on the map, there are a lot of areas marked in light yellow color. So light yellow color are the so-called areas which we call Satoyama, and I'll talk about it in a bit, or socio-ecological production landscapes and seascapes. So these are not protected areas, these are not national forests, but we have a high diversity, for example, of protected animal species, over 55%, red list plant species, which are exactly in these areas. And if you also look at this map, you will see that a lot of population actually lives in this kind of areas, especially in the northern and western parts of Taiwan. So I would like to speak a little bit about, what this concept is all about, before we move to the relevance of this concept, to the map of the island. So maybe some of you, you have read Anton's introduction to my presentation, have heard this acronym, this term before. We call it Socio-Ecological Production Landscapes and Seascapes, or SEPLS. It has a very comprehensive definition developed by United Nations University Institute for Advanced Study of Sustainability. And it goes as dynamic biocultural mosaics of habitats and land and sea use, where interaction between people and the landscape or seascape maintains or even enhances biodiversity while providing humans with the goods and services needed for well-being. So a very long definition, but the main point is it's a plot of not a plot, but it's an area, be it a landscape or a seascape, where humans and nature interact in such a way that biodiversity can be maintained and enhanced, and also humans can flourish. And of course, these are highly bioculturally diverse areas. So the Satoyama Initiative itself is a global initiative promoted by IPSI, which is the International Partnership for the Satoyama Initiative, and it's already 15 years old. And it's promoting, the concept of SEPLS through integrated landscape and seascape approaches. So I'll be talking a lot about it today as well. I must also note here, you're probably looking at this beautiful photo right now. It's one of our landscapes and seascapes called Xinshe here in the east coast of Taiwan. And you can see how we're also talking about connectivity here. So the concept of forest, river, village, ocean, these are not just standalone components, but they're completely a part of one picture. And as Anton has also mentioned in his email to you, even though we are talking about, this whole landscape, seascape, when we look at individual plots of farmed land, here in Taiwan, they're usually quite small, so just over 1 hectare. and they're usually managed by families. So this will be important when we go into like partnerships and stakeholder interactions. And I also dare to say here that for us in Taiwan, conservation of sepals, revitalization of sepals, and the Satoyama initiative as a whole is a national priority. And now you will understand why. So 3 years ago, Forestry and Nature Conservation Agency commissioned the project. It was a big group of scientists, mainly GIS experts, ecologists, who worked on a mapping of our Taiwan's biodiversity hotspots against distribution of sepals around the island. And of course, this is just a very rough map, but I think it's enough to understand how much they correlate, right? How much they overlap. So what this means is that a lot of our indigenous peoples and local communities who are sustainably managing these landscapes and seascapes are actually contributing to biodiversity conservation and support of ecosystem services, be it creation or maintenance of new landscapes or habitat restoration, species maintenance, and so on. But in addition to that, of course, they're very important. They also face a lot of challenges. And I'm sure maybe in your countries, in your contexts, I know in Japan for sure, we have similar challenges as well, like habitat fragmentation and roadkills, especially in the western part of Taiwan, where it's a lot more urbanized and developed. Conventional agriculture, as our farmers are getting older, as young people are leaving the countryside. And of course, it's also, we're talking about land use change, you know, when the encroachment of urban areas. And if we talk from a biocultural diversity perspective, which is my favorite one, of course, the challenge is loss of traditional culture, knowledge, loss of our indigenous languages, and so on. So faced with all these challenges, understanding the importance, faced with the challenges, it's kind of the background for us to understand why Taiwan Ecological Network was introduced as a nationwide project. So it was introduced back in 2018 by, I've been mentioning it a lot, our main biodiversity conservation agency, the Forestry and Nature Conservation Agency. And it's based on these two main components, which is a biodiversity database spatial planning and cross-sectoral cooperation. And this mainly occurs in areas which are outside of protected areas, be it shallow mountains, plains, wetlands, or coastal areas. If you look at the main objectives of Taiwan Ecological Network, they might look a bit lengthy, but both of them are focused on resilience. So the first one mainly looks at ecological resilience, how our ecosystems can be biodiverse, connected, well-functioning, protected. And the second objective looks at community resilience. So it's basically ecological and social economic resilience of our sepals. And so in order to implement this project, again, it was a large team that is still working on that. We mapped the entire island into 44 priority biodiversity areas. So the main habitats, the main ecosystem types, and also 45 conservation corridors. So now the whole island is kind of spatially understood this way. But we also know that spatial planning is one thing, but how can you actually promote, right, all of these conservation activities, work effectively with different sectors of society? So this is why we have strategic action tasks. So as I mentioned, the project itself started in 2018, and its first phase lasted 4 years, and we are currently in its second phase. So these are the 7 action tasks of the second phase. Of course, planning and database is always kind of the keystone, you know, supporting all of our activities, and we've already completed that. So a very important task is restoring native species and removal of invasive alien species, ecological corridors, connectivity of animal passages. We'll look at it today as well. Identification of high-risk areas and conservation of our endangered and specifically endemic species, fostering eco-friendly production environment, organic farming, eco-labeling, promotion of the Satoyama initiative and integrated landscape and seascape approaches. So this is why I mentioned that for us, Satoyama is a national priority, and it's actually a part of our biodiversity conservation program. And of course, we're also talking about SEPA, communication, education, and public awareness. And because personally I work a lot on integrated landscape and seascape approaches, I see it as a very important tool, as an approach, a tool in order to enable actually all of these action tasks. So you can imagine that everything I've mentioned just now, it's a huge task, right? It's impossible for one person, one agency, one university or whoever to accomplish this. And we realized it from very early on. This is why cross-sectoral cooperation is so central. So here on this slide, you can see the main agency that is responsible for the planning and implementation of the framework. But here in green color, you can see all other agencies which here in Taiwan belong to the Ministry of Agriculture, and they work very closely with us. For example, like biodiversity research institutes, they provide very science-based concrete data on biodiversity monitoring. Or for instance, even Fisheries Research Institute, when we talk about inland water and freshwater ecosystems, or irrigation agency when we work with farmers. But you will also see the yellow color. So it's working across other ministries and agencies. So apart from the agricultural sector. For example, Taiwan Sugar Corporation is a very big, it's a half private, half national company. We work very closely with it. Or Ministry of Transportation, when we talk about roadkills and habitat fragmentation. And of course, for instance, local governments are very key partners, or Council of Indigenous Peoples. So it's just to give you an understanding that when we talk about Taiwan Ecological Network, it's a very complex, a very diverse, a very cross-sectoral project. And so far I've provided kind of just a basic background for you to understand it, but I always feel that it's hard to grasp a concept unless you actually see it. It's on the ground implementation. So I've prepared 2 case studies. One is from a very, I must say they're very good friends of mine, working in Jiayi County, which is the southwestern region of Taiwan, on conservation of tree frog. And the second one is mainly focused on ecological corridors and construction of animal passages. It's my case study here in my hometown in Paulina. So we'll just go one by one. So the first one, I think this one is primarily related to our team, because we are focused on agriculture and sustainable production. Here, I know Anton loves very exotic kinds of production, so I've selected sustainable bamboo farming for habitat restoration and conservation. So this area, you already know where it is. It mainly focuses on rice paddy farming and bamboo cultivation. And over the years, they've been facing such challenges as conventional agriculture. So it's mainly spraying pesticides, use of chemical fertilizers, underuse of bamboo forests. It's a very common problem here in Taiwan. All forests need to be managed to some degree, but bamboo forests specifically require management. If they're not managed, they go crazy, and the entire habitat just gets disrupted. So this is what's been happening. And of course, these beautiful farmland green tree frogs, which are our Taiwan's endemic species, they've been disappearing because of all these factors. So this was the main objective of the project, to conserve the frog through eco-friendly production, sustainable management of bamboo forests, and also adding the eco-labeling component to this scheme. So I'm very grateful to my partners for providing this slide. I did not prepare this, but it's just to show you how through the implementation of this conservation, so as a part of Taiwan Ecological Network, community partnership, also engagement of business and ecological consultant companies, and also agricultural research organization. They have developed I call it like a frog-friendly eco-label, specifically focused on this tree frog. So it can mitigate habitat loss and fragmentation, enhance sustainable use and connectivity. And also it's a very nice way of communicating to our consumers and the general public how important the conservation of this endemic species is. And by buying this produce, by buying this sustainably farmed bamboo, you can actually support the conservation efforts. Of course, I know that dear Maiko knows about bamboo, but maybe for people like outside of East Asian region, I must mention that bamboo is it's not just it can have different uses. So in addition to construction, you can also eat it. And these are very young bamboo shoots, and they're very good for your health. They're very good for your blood, for your skin, you know, for maintaining the youthful appearance. So in Taiwan, bamboo is actually a very common and very popular product. And it's very nice during hot summer months, so you can keep the heat of your body down a little bit from the Chinese medicine perspective. So as a part of this eco-labeling scheme, we also have a ecological consultant company, which is currently working with our local community in Shanglin on monitoring and reporting over species numbers, if they have been increasing or not, and also understanding the conservation outcomes of these management activities. So these are the benefits that we have discovered so far. So from an ecological perspective, yes. So the eco-labeling scheme has been going on for 3 years now, and we have already observed the increasing, at first stable, and now already increasing population size of this tree frog. And also the local people are actually very much encouraged to have this long-term habitat management. And again, as I mentioned, these are quite small plots of lands, but they are managed by different farmers' families. And so from an economic and social perspective, it has provided stable income to at least this was last year's data, maybe now it's even more, 19 accredited farms. So these farms can put the label on their produce. It's also contributed to public recognition, consumer support, and what I love the most, it's ecotourism. So I've been on the eco tour to one of these farms, and it's amazing. So you can do a nighttime frog watching, learn about the characteristics and all these activities. And of course, it's community cohesion and return of migrant youth and a sense of place. And I've put up all these labels just for you to see that this, why we call it a Taiwan Ecological Network, because it's a cross-sectoral, multi-stakeholder approach that made the whole effort possible. Anton, and specifically for you, because you love exotic species and exotic, you know, kinds of production activities, I've put up this example as well. So we've also been conserving our leopard cat in a northwestern part of Taiwan in a very similar manner. So again, through sustainable habitat management, sustainable banana farming and shiitake mushroom farming, and also eco-labeling schemes. So you can see some of these examples, and also partnering with the French chain of supermarkets, Carrefour. It's quite popular here in Taiwan. So this is another similar example. But the second case study that I wanted to share, it's a little bit different, you know, aspect. It's more focused on ecological corridors and construction of animal, in our case, watershed passages, and also co-management as a part of an integrated landscape and seascape approach. So I must mention that because it's you know, a very big approach. It's a very big project when we look at this area. Sorry, I must mention that this area is located on the east coast of Taiwan. It's an indigenous landscape and seascape, very beautiful, which belongs to 2 indigenous tribes, Kavalan Sinshe tribe and Amis Tibet tribe. It's a very complex project that we've been working on for almost 10 years now, and it involves a lot of different aspects. It also has the agricultural component, the educational component. Now, for time considerations, I won't be able to talk about all of it. We currently have a paper in preparation, which is about to be published next year, and you can learn more. But in this presentation, I specifically want to focus on this whole watershed aspect, what kind of challenges we face, and how through multi-stakeholder cooperation we manage to deal with it. So in this place, it's a very common characteristic for the eastern part of Taiwan. We have very short, independent coastal streams, which are maybe just several hundred meters long, but they have very unique ecosystems and very unique species. Like, for example, in this stream, this called Tabuan or Jialang, we have 21 rare local shrimp varieties, which exist only here and nowhere else in Taiwan. So it's not only endemic, but it's specific to this particular area. But in the 1990s, for the disaster risk consideration purposes, there were over 170 lateral structures. I don't know what the right name in English is, riverwares or something like that. So they go horizontally across the entire river and they're not as large as dams, they're quite short, but they do prevent the connectivity in the river. So what we've been observing in the recent years is the drastic decrease in the number of all these shrimp varieties and the number of species as well. So it was a very long negotiation process as a part of Taiwan Ecological Network on how we can demolish, deconstruct in a constructive way some of these lateral structures in order to foster the connectivity of this watershed. So it involved different ministries like the Forestry and Nature Conservation, technical assessment by our Disaster Risk Reduction Ministry, our local government, Hualien County government, a lot of NGOs, media, ecological consultant companies, and of course, most importantly, 2 indigenous tribes that were very actively involved in the entire negotiation process. So it took about 3 years, to negotiate the entire scheme, understand what would be a safe way to demolish some of these whales, how we should work on it. And so in November 2020, 4 years ago, 9 of such downstream riverways were completely dismantled, including the largest one at the river mouth. So what does it mean? So up to date, it's been over 4 years, right? And the monitoring processes are actively ongoing. And of course, 4 years is not enough for long-term monitoring, but we have already observed a steady increase in shrimp numbers and even in species composition. And why I talk about co-management is that through this kind of, we call it a nature-based solution. It is a nature-based solution. It has actually contributed to the co-management partnership arrangement between the 2 tribes, the one that lives upstream and downstream, and different government agencies on, for example, sustainable use of shrimp and tide poaching activities, ensuring that the stream is clear of different debris and safe, for example, during typhoons and heavy rains. Also, it's been a very important ecotourism site for different people from all over Taiwan, because it's just such a unique case, all these shrimp varieties. So many people come to Hsinchu now just to learn about it. And you can imagine that for local people, it's been an amazing source of pride. So it's our shrimp, we're contributing to its conservation. And even now we are connecting these conservation activities to our indigenous primary school. So a lot of indigenous kids.
They're probably selling the shrimp, are they?
Yeah, and the water.
Oh, sorry. So a lot of our young kids, when they take classes and learn about local culture and languages, now they actually go to this stream and, just learn firsthand. So I must say that, in addition to all multi-stakeholder collaboration and increasing the connectivity of ecological corridor, it has also helped with communication, education, and public awareness. So it's just to show you, a different dimension of this project and how it can add different values, when we do things together. And so these are some of my final slides. I know I'm over my time limit, but I just wanted to say that it's an amazing project and we're very excited to work on it. Of course, there are many challenges, but you can imagine that just the government effort is not enough, right? And just successful case studies all over the island are never enough. So we always need a very strong societal support and a very strong multi-stakeholder partnership network that goes together with the ecological network. So this is why in Taiwan, we also have what we call Taiwan Partnership for the Satoyama Initiative. So it's been going on since 2015, and we currently have over 300 organizations all over the island. And so what we do is we get together every year and we conduct different kinds of exchange workshops, exchange our practical experiences, solutions, and a lot of them are related to on-the-ground implementation of Taiwan Ecological Network, how we engage youth, how we engage women, how we engage indigenous and local knowledge, and so on and so forth. And also very technical ones. For instance, how can we align biodiversity monitoring by scientific groups through citizen science, indigenous and local knowledge as a part of our greater initiative. So it's just to show you that these kinds of multi-stakeholder exchange activities on the ground are also a very important support system. And so last year, in order to enable the support system and to move forward, be it for the sake of Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework and its targets, or for the third phase of our Taiwan Ecological Network that we're currently planning, we conducted a year-long series of workshops with our government officers, indigenous and local communities, and a lot of private companies, NGOs. So simply to understand, we've been doing this for several years already. So where are we now? Where do we want to be? And how do we get, to where we want to be? So here, just to show you some photographs of how a lot of our government agencies and local communities and NGOs are actually working, on discussing this project and moving forward. This is me preaching about the importance of Taiwan Ecological Network, and in the language that would be understood by our local communities. And this is, for example, one of our local elders who is talking about this Taiwan Ecological Network from his own perspective, from his own needs, and even in his own language. So for everybody to kind of better understand the challenges and the ways forward. Yep, and this is my final slide. It's just such a big project and there is so much to talk about. But I think for this group, for our group, some of my key points look like this. So this is a nationwide biodiversity-focused spatial planning example, right? A very beautiful one. But it also must be accompanied with very practical and consistent on-the-ground implementation, for example, of landscape approaches of the Satoyama Initiative. And it should also work in both directions. So it's not just the top-down planning, but it's also the bottom-up needs and challenges that kind of should supplement and complement each other. We also talk about bundling support from other policy tools and programs. So, for example, you've heard about eco-labeling, or we've also used payments for ecosystem services in many cases, or community forestry to support a lot of our forestry communities. So I've talked about human network and how we've been doing this whole co-learning by doing from one another. And also, I guess the bottom line of every single actor is multi-stakeholder partnerships are really key to success, be it cross-sectoral, be it science, policy, community, triangular partnerships. And of course, facilitation of these partnerships. But I must also say that it's very easy to write it on paper. We talk about it in scientific papers, but they're very difficult to actually build and maintain. It's like a lasting love relationship. You can fall in love, but how can you maintain a proper marriage? So I think this cannot be overemphasized. And last but not least, as currently we are looking at the third phase of Taiwan Ecological Network, we're thinking a lot more about linkage between our terrestrial and marine environments. This is why I've mentioned now we started partnering with the Ocean Affairs Administration. And also, what does OECM, the concept of other effective area-based conservation measures, actually mean, in the context of Taiwan Ecological Network? You've probably realized how relevant it is, right? Also, promotion of NBS and understanding the added values of NBS across the whole island, and also engaging our businesses and companies as a part of ESG platforms, TNFDs, and other arrangements. So a lot of exciting opportunities to look forward to. And I'll stop here. Thank you for your attention. And I hope you have a lot of questions about OECMs. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much, Paulina, for a really brilliant presentation. I mean, I've learned so much. I mean, to be quite honest, I knew very little about Taiwan before this today. So now I have really gained an idea of what the island is like and what's happening there and why it is so special. And I think, well, the questions you could pass and put them through the chat, but otherwise just raise your hand if you want to ask a question. And while you're thinking about that, I mean, a question I'd like to ask you is this. I very much like your metaphor about a love relationship. You know, falling in love is one thing, but then you have to maintain that relationship. But my question would be, how do you actually first go to a community and get them to fall in love with you? In other words, how do you go to a community for the first time and try to get them on board to even want to work with you? Because once you have things like eco-labeling, or you have sustainable management and so forth, or they have what eco to the people are already, I mean, they're seeing the benefits. But at the very beginning, when you first go there, they don't, the benefits are not there yet. So, and they might actually be quite skeptical of you coming there and trying to get them to get involved in your network. So how do you approach communities at the first time, and what in your experience works best?
Thank you, Anton. It's such a good question. It's actually a key question. I'll try to answer it maybe from different perspectives. Something I think it's quite important when we talk about Taiwan Ecological Network, you know, and how it functions, is that the entire island is divided into 8 districts, so-called administrative districts, which are being managed by 8 branches operating under the Forestry and Nature Conservation Agency. So pretty much every branch is responsible for its own region. And at the initial stage of implementation of this project, every branch would identify. So we already know the priority areas, conservation corridors, but also identify the key potential partnership communities, circles, which are located, you know, within these key corridors and priority areas. And so having identified it, the next step is, as you mentioned, how can we start engaging with these communities, right? So with some of these communities, actually, our branches already have very lasting relationship through previous projects. For example, I've mentioned Community Forestry Project. It's been going on since 2002, so for 23 years now, a very long one. And many branches already know these communities. They already have quite a stable, you know, and trusting relationship. So in many cases, these are kind of the initial communities that we approach and start working with. And during this process, because, you know, just government community partnership, it's not necessarily a stable one. The government tries to engage other kinds of stakeholders. In many cases, it's organizations like us, from academia, from research institutions. Sometimes it's ecological consultant companies, NGOs. So these are people who might be a bit easier for communities to communicate with, you know, a different kind of trust barrier. So they work as facilitators, as kind of a bridge builders, you know, between the government and the community. So as this network, you know, starts growing and kind of the partnership strengthens, this is when, you know, the case study starts taking shape. For example, like in the tree frog example, it was initially Jiayi branch of Forestry and Nature Conservation Agency community. Then they involved Nature Watch consultant company. Then they involved Agricultural Research Institute, and then they started involving businesses. So it's kind of an overlapping process. This is one part. And the exciting part happens next. Is once this case becomes a success, you know, something to learn from, this is when our exchange activities, such as Taiwan Partnership for the Satoyama Initiative, become extremely important, because we invite other communities, not only from this region, but also all over Taiwan, to come to this place and, you know, learn about it. And not just learn, you know, from academia, from government, but from community itself, you know, go on the ground, you know, listen to the story, understand the challenges. And I feel that in many cases, this helps a lot, you know, kind of, you know, upscaling, cross-scaling, whatever you call it, because communities, they trust each other, right? They trust, you know, what works and what doesn't. So I feel it's been a part of success as well. And like the case study here in Xinshe, we've been working together for over 10 years now. And for us, it's actually a very important upscaling case study for other areas all around Taiwan. it would be my messy answer to a beautiful question.
Okay. Yeah, so just if you have a question, just raise your hand or just unmute yourself and ask a question. And certainly what to round off what you just said, Paulina, I really that's a really interesting idea to once you have a case study that's developing well and that you get others to come and visit it, on the spot. Yeah, that's a really interesting idea because people, they learn from each other. As you say, communities trust each other. So farmers are more likely to be impressed by what other farmers are doing, to give an example. And that's an interesting approach, this immediate mutual visiting of each other. That's, But just a very, okay. So, who funds it, by the way? Because the people have to travel. Do you have money for that?
This is a very important question. This is why I kept on talking about phases. So I must mention that Taiwan Ecological Network is not an official legislation. It's not a law that's out there. It is a project. And so every project has it needs its funding, right? And it has its time limit. So every so-called phase is 4 years long. And currently we're at the very end of the second phase, and we're applying for the third one. And it's funded by our Council of Agriculture, which is, in Taiwan, it's a little bit complicated, but this is like the main government body, which is managing all of these different agencies related to various agricultural sectors. So every 4 years, when we apply for the next phase, it means that our previous successes need to be evident enough. So, the project has a value. And it also means that our next phase has enough novelty and, enough problem-oriented to attract all these funds. And this is one of the reasons why applying for the third phase, we're focusing so much on interlinkages with the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, especially Target 3, like OECMs, why we talk about NBS so much, nature-based solutions. It's a huge trend in Taiwan now. And it might sound weird, but if you want to get funded, you need to have NBS as a part of your project. And this is also why we see linkages with companies, private entities is such an important part of the project. Because, having government funding, per phase is very important. But to sustain it on a long-term basis, we really want to have private companies more involved. And that's why different kinds of ESG schemes or TNFDs are so important.
Yeah, I was going to ask the same question about funding. Thanks, Anton, and nice to see everybody too. But another question I had that sort of was, I guess, a little bit related was, well, firstly, how I was interested in how much funding that might be and whether you'd know how much the country spends as a percentage of GDP or however you might measure it, if you know that, and whether there are any big barriers in getting governments on board, because to me it's really impressive. I mean, it's such a fantastic broad scale ambitious project to have something connecting up such a vast landscape over 1 million hectares, and I think that's a really amazing thing to see. But I wonder how did you manage to get, or how easy does that funding flow? Because it would be very expensive, I imagine.
Alex, thank you so much for your question. You're right. You hit the nail on the head. That's why every time our project application needs to look perfect, to get the funding. Unfortunately, the number it's open data and I can look it up. Unfortunately, I can't tell you right now. I'm very bad at numbers. I don't remember it, but I can look it up and, email you this information. So I'm sorry, I can't answer this part of the question. But it is a big number. How should I put it? It's big number, when we talk about biodiversity conservation, but it's a very small number for example, an agency like Ministry of Transportation. And I'll explain a little bit how it works. So when the funding, when we successfully apply for the 4 years of the phase, the funding comes from the Council of Agriculture to the main, the initiator of the project, to the Forestry and Nature Conservation Agency. And so the Forestry and Nature Conservation Agency is responsible for, for properly assigning these tasks and responsibilities, working with all these stakeholders. And so they are navigating the financial flows. So for example, this much will go to the Council for Indigenous Peoples, this much will go to the Ministry of Transportation, but it's all based, of course, on a negotiation basis. What kind of project is being implemented? So all of these different agencies, they kind of, by taking money from Taiwan Ecological Network, they are mandated to include this ecological component as a part of their own policies. I'll give an example. For instance, Ministry of Transportation, be it over highways or railways, they're responsible for considering safe animal passages when constructing new ways or new, be it railroads or highways. And so our branches are negotiating with the Ministry of Transportation, and based on this negotiation, giving them money. But you understand, it's not just about money, it's also the technology, all this monitoring and stuff. And a funny example, my colleague told me just last week, when they were working with the Ministry of Transportation, they were saying, oh, so we will give you this amount of money. And the Ministry of Transportation said, this money is nothing to us. It's just such a small amount. What we need from you is make us a very good presentation why biodiversity is related to transportation and why we need safe animal passages. Because for them, this kind of, a value, like worldview, value, mindset change, and the way how you present and explain it, in some cases is much more important than giving money. So it's a very interesting kind of cooperation. But yeah, this is mainly how it works. And also every sector, every agency is responsible for reporting back at the end of each year. We have like a big nationwide conference when they report on what has been carried out, how much money has been spent, and so on. But I will get back to you on the exact number. It's a week.
Yeah, thank you. Very interesting.
Yes, that reminds me because I'm not sure that Paulina, whether you have Alex's email address, but you can always send it to us and we'll forward it.
Yeah, thank you so
forward
much.
on if you don't actually have the address, or Alex can always put it in the chat, just in case. Then,
Sounds good.
Yeah. Anyone else with a question or remark? Yes, Jing Yi. It's a question in the chat. I'll read it out so everybody can hear it. It's a question, Jing Yi. In mainland China, spatial planning is very inflexible. How does the spatial planning in Taiwan target the biodiversity and balance the development of these areas? So that's a very good question, actually. I can think of other countries where spatial planning is not so flexible.
Oh, thank you so much, Zini, for your question. Yeah, in China, of course, it's a much larger context, a bit different. But I feel that, no, I don't, it's not that I feel it. I think it goes back again and again to the slides that I just showed, because for us, it's still a challenge. We are biodiversity conservation minded people. We are by the Nature Conservation Agency. But how can we talk to all these different stakeholders whose priority and whose values are not focused on biodiversity? So that's why we are trying so much to engage, like I mentioned, Ministry of Transportation, in many cases, even local governments, in such big corporations like Taiwan Sugar Corporation, just to, in some cases, to start a dialogue and also to show by example that development and conservation objectives do not need to counteract, but they can actually go hand in hand. So, but I think it's like an idealistic answer to Jimmy's question. So a lot of negotiations involved in that.
Maybe you should first explain, because I mean, because I would be intrigued as well to know how strong is spatial planning in Taiwan. I mean, is it like you have a whole country, a spatial plan for the whole country, which says this is a residential area, that's industrial area, this is agriculture, and so forth, and is very rigid, or do you have, or how does it
Yeah.
work? Or do you have a very open system where basically on private
Right.
property people can do what they want and there's no plan at all? I mean, how is it in your
I
country?
understand your question now, Anton. Yeah, these are two separate systems in Taiwan as well. So what I presented, this is only planning when we talk about biodiversity conservation. So it's planning of biodiversity priority areas, conservation corridors. But in Taiwan, which we have what we call land planning. So this is what, Anton, what you're talking about. So which kind of areas are residential areas, which kind of areas are agricultural, aquacultural, and so on and so forth. And this is also a tricky topic for us as well, because when Taiwan Ecological Network was carried out, the whole land planning network was still in the process of being, I shouldn't say being created, but being redesigned. So Taiwan Ecological Network kind of went ahead of it a little bit. So, and the land planning, the whole system actually only came out last year. So what we're working on right now as well is trying to merge two like spatial planning approaches and also potentially trying to see the conflicting areas. So now I understand the essence of your question, but I think it's kind of happening in parallel right now, and the dialogue is going on. But definitely for the third phase, it's something we need to talk
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you probably, if the national plan, which you say came out in 2024 last year,
Yeah, it's a
if
very
it has
young
certain, if it areas which are sort of marked as agricultural or forestry or so forth, I mean, that would, or as would probably be okay. That's not a problem for you. But if you have an area which you, for one of your hotspots, where you want to have where you actually have a case study running, and the national plan says this can be built for a residential area, then you have a
Yeah.
problem potentially, don't you? So how would you deal with that? Would you go talk to the authorities to have the plan changed on that detail, or how would you deal with a situation like that?
And then I feel that your question actually never exceeds my capacity to answer it, because you know it's just it's such a big question. But it has been recognized, and even I must mention that at a very local level, you know, working in Xinshou and promoting our integrated landscape and seascape approach, we had partners who are working on the land use spatial planning, you know, attend our meetings and talk to us, but only in the local context. You know, as I mentioned, forest, river, village, ocean, what goes where. But at a national context, I think it requires a different kind of a capacity. I think it's a very good.
Well, I certainly wish you success in your negotiations or to
Thank
get
you.
any sort of issues with the new land use planning solved to your satisfaction. All right, we're reaching the end of the session. Anybody want to ask a question or make a remark? Put up your hand or just go ahead. Doug, you're up. Yeah.
Yeah. No, thanks. First of all, Paulina, thanks. That was a fantastic, inspiring presentation. It was great to see best practice on the other side of the world. I'm in sunny Ireland, so not quite as tropical as you are, but you know, great ideas. And no, thank you for that. No, just I suppose it was just more a question. I had to miss the first bit of the presentation, so I just wondered, will the notes be shared afterwards, Anton, for the presentation slides? That was, I suppose, that was my question. I think you guys asked a lot of useful questions, so yeah, thank you.
Thanks for that, Doug, actually, because it allows me to naturally move to what I saw as the closing item of this meeting.
Oh,
We have
okay.
exactly 5 minutes, so that's just perfect. So what we have been what we're working on, Sophia has been working intensely on that and we've been assisted by Philip and Florentia, on developing a platform, Slack. We're going to use Slack. That's the IT we're going to use. As a platform where we could exchange messages, have little online meetings, store documents, and of course all the recordings. At the moment, we've recorded every session, including the one about South Africa and the one about biodiversity credits, but we haven't actually uploaded them anywhere yet. We're waiting for the Slack platform because that's where we want to upload them. But if it's going to take much longer, I think we may actually upload the recordings to the ABC web pages as a temporary solution, so you can consult them there. So a bit of patience there. But with the Slack platform, what we're trying to do is get a free account as a non-profit. So that requires some admin, and that's actually holding up the process. But once it's there, it's operational. Like I said, we'll use it so people can contact each other in between meetings. People can answer questions through the Slack platform. You can upload documents, upload videos. We can even hold online meetings there. We can do lots and lots of things to make this network come more alive than just seeing each other once every few weeks. And very often people can't join because the time differences are too great, or because it's a holiday in their country, or because you're on traveling, whatever. Like today, for instance, the effect of the May 1st holiday is very noticeable. The number of apologies I've received. So this is the idea would be that if we would have one open channel where everybody who's in this network could participate, and you could even get your friends, your colleagues to join in. I mean, it'd be an open channel. As these meetings are open to bring along colleagues, that's how we would grow the network. We might open thematic channels if there's interest in developing them, but that's for a later stage. Let's first see how this platform is used once it starts. And we would, Sophia, Philippa, Florence and I would moderate, at least certainly initially, and then we'll see how it develops. It will be a network platform for all of you to use and develop. And so all this sounds really good, but where are we at this point in time with the platform? Sophia, what's the latest news?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, good. Yeah, so we are eligible, and so we could qualify for the pro option or plan. So it is live technically, so we can start populating the platform. So what will happen, I guess, is I will add Anton, Philippa, and Florencia first, and then we can start discussing, what kind of channels we want, etc. Basically from now on, we can put on the recordings, the minutes, the presentations, anything. So from now on, it's down to us to decide how to populate it. Yeah, so I guess that's good news.
Yeah, that's very good news indeed. So I forgot you're right. First, we would do kind of a test run with just the four of us to sort of get to grips with it. But when would it be open to everybody else? At what point? And how long would that be before we open it to everybody?
Well, I think it just comes down to us. Like, when can we, get together and decide on the main channels, and then it can be populated. I think, adding you all is not that big of a job. So yeah, I don't know, a couple of weeks, 2 weeks. It really depends on how fast we can get together, the four of us.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Okay. Well, that's the question of organizing an online meeting, and then but
Yeah.
would it already be possible to put the presentations there, all three of them, so that people can consult, or is that would it somehow rather interfere with the processes you've described? I mean, do we have to do consecutively, or could you already put the presentations there and so that everybody can consult them, or is that
I can
not a good idea?
probably, I can put everything up what we have. But then since we add the whole network to the platform, it will not be visible for others than us, the four of us.
Oh, okay. Yeah, right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so
Now,
I guess sending out the minutes would be good, doing it by email, so everyone is notified that what went on, and then later in a couple of weeks, then everyone can just rewatch or whatever.
yeah. Okay. The alternative would be to put the presentations on the ABC web pages.
Yeah.
Is that how fast could that be done, do you reckon?
That's not me doing it, so I would need to contact Jenny. But yeah, I think that also can be done. So if you think that's something to do, then definitely we can do that.
yeah, I would. I mean, I don't know. I mean, but I think people would be impatient. Certainly, the ones who wanted to see the biodiversity credits. I mean, they've been waiting 2 months now for it. So I think it's a temporary solution. But just if we put them on the three of them, including today's, on the ABC webpage, to send a link around and say this is temporary, and then we have more. Also, we're under less pressure, you know, with the test run and all that, and with setting up the platform properly before it goes open to everybody. I think that sounds like the best way forward, I think.
Yeah. Okay, good idea. Philip, you wanted to say something, I think. Yes, no?
Philippa, you're muted if you want to say something. If you're okay, or if not, while for the last minute, I mean, does anybody from any of you have any suggestions for the platform now that it's operational? We're going to actually test it and then open up to everybody. Any suggestions that we should bear in mind when we are setting it up, getting it ready? Any good ideas? Proposals? No, because otherwise, just then we'll just get to work with it, and once we've got the hang of it, then we'll let everybody know it's there, and with instructions of how to go about it. Because you probably have to, if you don't already have Slack, you'll probably have to install some app on your phones or on your laptop or your desktop. And I don't know if we need passwords and stuff like that, but all those things will go out once we know how it works and we've set it up properly. That's right, isn't it, Sophia? That would be how it goes.
Yes. Yeah. So once I start adding you, you will get a notification that you've been added to this and that platform by me. And then if you don't have Slack, then you can either use your browser if it's supported by Slack, or you can just download it and use it through that. But it's quite intuitive, and yeah, it's not really hard to use. So I think, even if you haven't used it before, I don't think it's a big deal to learn.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we even discussed whether we might organize a little online training session in case for people who might find it rather difficult news initially. But we'll cross a bridge when we come to it. Okay, then I think we're done. So thanks everybody for joining.
Thank you.
And